Everyone says that to get better at programming, you need to build coding projects. But how do you come up with the idea for your next coding project? It can be daunting sometimes, and it's hard to build momentum when trying to build something new. First of all, you don't want your coding project to be too hard because, say, you're building it and then you get stuck, and then you don't have anyone to help you because no one has ever built that project before. Or on the other hand, you don't want your programming project to be too easy because then you're not going to learn much from it and it's going to be a waste of time. Or say you already have the idea for your coding project. How do you go about starting it and planning it and building it in such a way that it is efficient and it is systematic? So in this video, I'm going to give you some advice and try to help you come up with the plan for your next coding project. I'll share some general principles and also draw from my own experience of building my own programming projects over the past 20 plus years. So let's get started. So my name's Henrik and I'm here to help you learn the foundations of software development. So let's get started. All right, so the first and most obvious thing you need to do for your next coding project is to come up with the idea for your next coding project. So what is your project going to do? What are some of the features it's going to have? And something that I like to ask myself when coming up with the idea for my next coding project is to think about, is there something in my life that I can automate through a software application? Is there a software or app that I can build that will help make my life easier and something that I can use in the real world? And a really simple example of this would be a tip calculator. So in America, when you go to a restaurant, you have to tip afterwards, and you can actually just build an application to help you calculate the tip. And that's a really simple one that I often give to beginners. And so you can build a tip calculator, and that's something that you can actually use in your everyday life. And another one that I built recently is I do options trading, and I was managing my options contracts in a Google Sheets spreadsheet. And over time, I started adding programming logic to that Google Sheets spreadsheet, and I realized it would be a lot simpler and more straightforward if I implemented this in a software application. So that's how I got the idea for that software application. The reason why I emphasize that you build a project that you can use in your everyday life is, first of all, it gives you motivation to build the application because you know it's something that could make your life easier and help automate some aspect of your life. So first, that's just the first one, motivation to build the project. And it's a lot easier to build projects when there is a motivation behind it, if there's something in it that will help make your life better. And so it helps you actually finish the programming application. And then the second reason why I emphasize this is when you're going to program in the real world, you have to build software applications that are actually useful to people. So there has to be some value in the world. There has to be some market value to it. And so that's why I emphasize building an application that you can actually use in the real world. I talk about this a lot in my Capstone project workshop, and in that workshop I talk about 3 secrets to building your own Capstone project in just 3 months. And a Capstone project is just a project that you build using all the skills that you've acquired. And so if you're interested in that, if you want to hear some more secrets on how to build a Capstone project, you can download that in the link in the description and watch it today. All right, so after you've come up with the idea for your next coding project, next, you need to come up with the programming language you're going to use to implement that idea. And of course, you can use multiple programming languages. I've had projects where we've coded with 3 different programming languages, but for beginners and for just to make things easier, I would say just stick with just one programming language at a time. And so if you're going to build a web application, stick to JavaScript or C#. And then if you're going to build a console application, stick with Python, C# or C. When you've come up with the idea for your next coding project, you'll realize that some ideas are easier to implement in some languages and other ideas are easier to implement in the other languages. And so coming up with your idea first is really important. And when you've come up with the idea, it's going to be readily apparent which programming language you're going to use next. And if you've only learned one programming language so far, then just think of an idea that you could actually implement in that coding language that you've learned. If you're fairly new to programming, I recommend that you build your first projects in C and you build console applications. And the reason why I say that is because that's how I learned how to program at first. And that's how pretty much every software developer started out. They started out building console applications. And if you've learned in university, you started off by learning the foundations of programming through learning C. Building your first programming projects in C helps you really focus on the software development process and also focus on the fundamentals and the foundations of software development. So if I've convinced you to code in C and build console applications, you can rethink your idea and think about, is there something in your life that you can automate through a console application that you can write in C? I asked ChatGPT this question: is there something in your life that you can automate through a console application? Programming project for beginners. And it gave some really good ideas. First is a daily task tracker. This is a console app that lets you add, check off, and view your daily tasks. I think that would be a good project, almost like a to-do list application. Another one is a calorie or expense logger. Of course, a lot of people are trying to stay in shape and be fit, and you can input your meals and help manage your calorie intake. Another one is a random workout or meal generator. This one seems really cool. I haven't seen this idea before. Basically, randomly picks from a list of meals or exercises. And then a simple habit tracker where you log whether you did a certain habit each day. And the problem it solves is to help you build habits. And you're trying to build habits. The problem that you have is that you're trying to build habits, but you lose consistency. So maybe you want to get into the habit of programming. You can build a programming project app to help you get into the habit of programming. And so those are some ideas from ChatGPT. All right, after coming up with the idea for your programming project and then choosing the language you're going to code that idea in, next you need to break down your programming project into the different features that you're going to implement. And I think it will really help if you write it down and you outline the different features that your programming project is going to have and commit to that list of features. For my options trading application, some features that I wanted was I wanted to be able to see all of my contracts that are currently going on at the moment. So I wanted to see all of those. I wanted to see how they're all performing and if I'm making money from those kinds of contracts. Also, I wanted to see my performance, like how much have I been making through options trading, because I wanted to see if this was really worth it, if it was worth my time, or should I just invest in an index fund? So I wanted to see my performance. And then another thing I wanted to do is to be able to easily roll those contracts. So if it's not performing well, I can roll it to try to get a better contract. And so come up with a list of features for your programming project. And it's really key to lay out all the features that you're going to implement and commit to just that list. Because if you don't commit to that one list, then if you keep coming up with new ideas for your programming project, then your programming project will never quote unquote finish. So whenever you have a programming project, you'll realize you can always make something better. You can always add more features to it. You can always improve upon your programming project. So you need some sort of done criteria to be able to tell yourself that you're done with this project. And if you're coding your project and you realize, oh, I actually want to add this feature to it and this feature, you can reserve those features for version 2 of your programming project. Coming up with that list of features is really important because it helps you get clear on what you're trying to do with that application and help you segment different aspects of your application, different functions of your application. And also it will help you manage your time and your schedule for building this application. All right, now that you have that list of features that you're going to have for your project, next you should come up with a strategy for how you're going to implement each of those features. So look at each of the features and think about what is something that I must learn in order to accomplish that feature. What is some skill I need to pick up in order to code that feature? Or maybe you have an idea that you want to implement something that you've already learned. go ahead and write that down. Or maybe you want to be able to look into some APIs that you might use to help code that feature. Start doing some research into APIs, and then see if there's some API that you can use online to help with that feature. So for example, for my options trading application, I want to be able to look at my stock prices. So I needed an API to check the stock market to see what the prices were for those stocks, and also for my options contracts, I need to check what are the prices, what are the contract prices for those contracts. So I needed an API, and I did some research first before I coded this, because I didn't want to code this options trading application and then not be able to get that information. So I needed to look for an API for that. And so go ahead and look for those APIs that you're going to need for your application and put them in your outline. Another example of a feature is, say your program has users in it. And so how are you going to manage that user data? How are you going to store that user data and then pull up that user data in your application? So come up with the strategy for that feature for those users, and then you'll have a really good plan moving forward and be really clear on what you need to do for that programming project. All right, now that you have that list of features you're going to have for your coding project, next you're going to come up with a schedule for your coding project. You're going to come up with a timetable on when you're going to finish that application or that coding project. And I really believe you need to set a due date, because if you don't set a due date for that application or that project, then you may not ever finish that project. And this is the beauty of having school or classes, because you pay money in order to go into this class, and then the class gives you assignments and projects, and then you have to make sure that you turn in your assignments on time, or else you're not going to get a good grade on your assignment or your projects. So it kind of forces you, it gives you accountability, and really pushes you to work hard and accomplish and finish your projects. And so for your coding project, you don't have the luxury of paying money in order to get that accountability. So you need to create accountability for yourself. You need to set a due date for when you're going to finish this application, and then plan your time accordingly, and maybe commit to maybe 30 minutes a day or an hour a day on that programming project. And over time, you'll be able to build your project. You'll be able to lay out which features you're going to work on week one, which features you will work on week two, etc., etc., etc. In my companies, we would have projects that last for maybe a year or two. And for those projects, we would have sprints, something called sprints. And sprint is just a 2 to 3 week period. And then during that sprint, you would have tasks that you would have in your team. So you would say different tasks that you are going to accomplish, different software tasks. And then you have to provide an estimate of how long it will take to accomplish that task. Even though you have no idea how to accomplish that task, you have to come up with an estimate on how long you'll need to finish that task. And so this way of doing software development really pushes us. And because if we don't have those sprints, if we don't have those due dates, we have the whole year to work on our programming project or our project. And so it's easy to take our sweet time and not really push ourselves. And then before you know it, at the end of the year, you haven't really accomplished much. And then you wish that you had planned your time better. And so being able to set a schedule for your programming project is really important, so that you can kind of set these own sprints for yourself, these different 2 to 3 week periods, and these break down your different tasks for your project. If you can do that, then you'll be able to accomplish your programming project with a really good plan. Another idea to help with this accountability is to find a friend and then tell that friend that you're going to give them this application by this date. And so that friend can give you some accountability for that. Or even better yet, find another software developer friend and then code an application together, and then you'll be able to encourage each other. And it only works if you have a friend who's also motivated as well. If it's someone who's not really motivated, then you're coding your part of the project, and then they're not coding their part, and then you'll end up not finishing the project at all. You need to find someone else who's also motivated to finish this project with you. And so that's something you can do. Or another thing you can do too, if you can't find a friend, you've got me. You can also leave a comment down below what kind of application you're going to build. And then you can have some accountability with other commenters. Okay, so you've come up with the idea for your programming project. You've come up with the programming language, also the different features, the list of features that you're going to implement to say when you're going to consider this project done, that list of features, and then also the strategy for how you're going to implement those features, and then also a schedule that you're going to commit to in order to accomplish this programming project within a set period of time. And ideally, you should have this in a document somewhere so that you can have it in writing. And then once you have that in writing, go ahead and start using Git and start building your programming project. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, if you want more guidance and support and help for building your next coding project, you can watch my free Capstone project workshop, which is just a workshop where I share 3 secrets to coding your own Capstone project in just 3 months. And so you can download that in the link in the description and learn more about how to build your next coding project. Alright, that's it for this week's video. I hope it really helped you out and helped you think about how to plan your next coding project. And if it did help you out, please like and share and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any other comments or questions, feel free to let me know in the comments section and I'll be sure to answer you there. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.